The moment I stepped into the tall, sun-bleached grass that morning, I knew something about the landscape felt off. I had been out here countless times filming wildlife for my small channel, but the silence now was different, tense, pressed down, as if the field itself was holding its breath. I was adjusting the focus on my phone when I caught a flicker of movement to my left. At first I thought it was just a deer slipping through the grass. Then I saw the spots. A bobcat stepped out into a patch of light, her body low, shoulders trembling. What froze me wasn't the animal itself. I'd seen bobcats before, but the large white bag clenched between her jaws. It dragged along the dirt with a soft scraping sound. She stopped, turned her head slightly, and that's when I heard it. An almost human-like whimper. The sound was raw, desperate, nothing like the usual hiss or growl a bobcat makes. I raised my phone and hit record without thinking. The bobcat tugged the bag forward, then braced her front paws against it as if trying to tear it open. Her teeth sank into the plastic, and she pulled so hard her whole body shook. Every few seconds, she let out that same broken sound, half growl, half cry. I stood completely still. She wasn't acting like a predator. She was acting like something terrified. I took one small step forward. The grass rustled under my boot, and the bobcat snapped her head toward me. Her eyes were wide, golden, wet, frantic. She didn't back away. Instead, she placed one paw over the top of the bag as if shielding it. She growled, but the sound was weak, almost pleading. I lifted my hand slowly, trying to show I wasn't a threat. I had no idea what was inside the bag, but something about the way she guarded it made my stomach twist. I'd seen injured animals protect prey before, but this was different. She wasn't feeding. She was trying to save something. She bit at the knot near the top of the bag again, shaking her head, but the thick plastic wouldn't give. The moment she pulled with all her strength, the bag slipped from her teeth and toppled over. A hard corner of something inside struck the ground, and the plastic tore just enough to open a thin gap. The bobcat froze, staring at the tear, then nudged her nose against it. From where I stood, I still couldn't see anything inside. I took another step. She didn't lunge. She didn't run. She just stared at me with this exhausted, hollow look. I could hear her panting, fast and uneven. I could also hear something else, a faint, irregular movement from inside the bag. I raised my phone closer to zoom in, but the wind shifted, carrying a tiny sound toward me. I thought at first it was an insect. Then I heard it again, a thin, shaky squeak. So soft, I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. The bobcat pressed her cheek to the torn piece of plastic and let out a sound that broke whatever distance I was trying to keep between us. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't warning. It was grief. I lowered my phone. My heart was pounding. Something was alive in that bag. The bobcat's paw slipped on the plastic, widening the tear just a little more. The squeak came again, clearer this time, fragile and wavering. I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck. My mind raced through every possibility I didn't want to consider. Someone had put something living inside that bag, sealed it, and left it out here. The bobcat moved her head toward me an inch, then back toward the bag, as if urging me to understand. The whimper she made wasn't a warning anymore. It was a plea. I crouched down slowly, keeping my eyes on her. She didn't move. She didn't strike. She just watched me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. I placed one hand on the grass and leaned closer to the bag. Before I could touch it, the torn seam suddenly split wider under the pressure of whatever was inside. The plastic popped, and the faint sound from within became sharp and unmistakable. A tiny, breathless cry. I froze. The bobcat froze. And that was the moment I understood that the thing she'd been protecting wasn't prey. It was something she loved. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The tiny cry from inside the torn bag kept replaying in my head, sharp and thin like it was scraping against the air. The bobcat shifted her weight, keeping one paw braced over the rip as if she feared the contents might spill out. She wasn't snarling anymore. Her breathing was fast, trembling, almost uneven. Whatever strength she had was being poured into guarding that bag. I eased my foot forward, sliding it through the grass so slowly the blades barely swayed. The bobcat's eyes flicked toward me, but the fear I expected wasn't there. Instead, her gaze held something that made my throat tighten: exhaustion, desperation, and something that felt uncomfortably close to trust. I spoke in a low voice, keeping it steady, the way wildlife officers once told me to when I filmed them handling injured animals. I told her I wasn't going to hurt her. She blinked, her ears twitching, but she didn't retreat. She merely shifted her paw and pressed it more firmly onto the plastic. The tear widened when she moved. Through that narrow opening, I saw movement. A faint twitch, like a tiny limb brushing against the plastic from the inside. I crouched lower, the ground cool beneath my knee. The bobcat let out a sound unlike anything I'd heard from a wild animal. It was soft and strained, the kind of noise an animal makes when it has run out of ways to protect what matters. My pulse thudded in my ears. If something small was inside that sealed bag, it had been breathing recycled air for who knew how long. The bag looked thick, the kind meant for storing grain or feed. There was no way oxygen lasted long inside. I had seen enough animals trapped in containers to know how fast things could go wrong. I leaned slightly to the side so I could glimpse the shape inside more clearly. The bobcat shifted her body, not to block me, but to make space. That small gesture rattled me. Bobcats don't yield ground. They defend it until the last moment. Yet here she was, stepping aside like she wanted me closer. The tear in the bag caught a sliver of sunlight, and for a second the interior brightened just enough. I froze. A tiny paw, no bigger than a mouse, pushed feebly against the plastic before falling still. My breath caught in my throat. I whispered to the bobcat that I was going to help. She didn't respond with a growl or a hiss. Instead, she lowered her head and touched the bag gently with her nose, as if urging me to do something. My hands were shaking as I reached out. I half expected her to strike, to snap out of whatever fragile trust she had placed in me. But she stayed perfectly still, her entire body rigid with a kind of brittle hope. I slid my fingers under the torn edge and tugged, but the material was thick and stiff. I pulled harder, using my body weight, and the edge finally gave way with a harsh ripping sound. The bobcat flinched at the noise, but didn't move away. As the opening widened, warm air rushed out, carrying a faint, sour smell of fear and stale breath. I pulled the gap wider until I could see inside. 2 bobcat kittens lay tangled together near the bottom of the bag. Their fur was matted, their bodies limp. One of them twitched weakly, its tiny chest rising in short, uneven breaths. The other didn't move at all at first. Then, as if sensing the fresh air, it let out a faint mewl, so thin it barely registered. I felt something twist hard inside me. Someone had put them in there deliberately. Bags don't tie themselves shut. The mother lowered herself beside the opening, her whiskers trembling as she nudged the nearest kitten with the tip of her nose. Her movements were frantic at first, then slow, almost mournful. She let out a low, rumbling sound that vibrated faintly through the ground beneath my hand. I knew I had to get them out fast. The longer they stayed in the bag, the weaker they would become. I reached in, scooping the kittens up gently, careful to keep them close together. They were warm but frighteningly still. As I lifted them out, the mother backed up just enough to give me space, then circled them anxiously, nudging each one. Her tail twitched in sharp, jerky motions that betrayed how close she was to panic. I glanced at the outside of the bag, trying to understand how this happened. That's when I noticed the faded logo near the bottom, a circular stamp with the outline of a farm, the kind that sells feed and livestock supplies. The letters were smudged, but the shape was unmistakable. This wasn't some random accident. Someone with access to that farm's bags had done this. The bobcat pressed her body protectively around her kittens as I stared at the stamp, feeling a cold weight settle in my chest. There was a human trail in this story, and it wasn't going to lead anywhere good. The kittens lay curled against their mother, barely clinging to consciousness, and for a moment I didn't know what to do next. The air around us felt thin, stretched by panic. The mother bobcat nudged one of the kittens repeatedly, licking its head in fast, frantic strokes, but her own legs were unsteady. She was shaking, not from fear of me, but from exhaustion. I pulled my phone from my pocket with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I stepped back a few feet, giving the bobcat space, and tapped through my contacts until I reached the number for the regional wildlife office. I had called them before for sightings, for injured deer, for abandoned dens. Never for something like this. When the dispatcher answered, my voice cracked as I explained what I'd found. 2 kittens sealed in a bag, a dehydrated mother, a farm-stamped sack left in the middle of nowhere. The dispatcher asked me to stay put and said an inspector named Cody was closest to my location. He'd head out immediately. She told me not to touch the animals more than necessary and to give the mother space until Cody arrived. I agreed, hung up, and turned back toward the bobcat. Except she wasn't there. My heart lurched. The grass where she had lain was flattened, and one of the kittens was gone. Only one tiny body remained, weak as a wilted leaf. I spun in a slow circle, scanning the brush, listening for movement. All I could hear was the rustle of wind through the dry grass. I crouched beside the surviving kitten. Its breaths were small and uneven. The patch of earth where it rested was still warm, meaning the mother hadn't left long ago. She must have picked up the stronger kitten and carried it to safety, but she was too drained to manage both. The dispatcher's warning echoed in my head. Don't intervene unless necessary. But this, right here, was necessary. If I left the kitten where it was, it wouldn't make it more than a few minutes under the sun. I slid my hands under its tiny body. It barely weighed anything. Its head lolled weakly against my thumb. I hesitated, glancing around one more time for the mother. If she was watching, she didn't show herself. She had made a choice. Take the one she could carry, leave the one she trusted me with. I unzipped my jacket and tucked the kitten inside, close to my chest. Its warmth was faint, but it was something. I zipped the jacket halfway, forming a small pocket that held it snugly. I knew I couldn't just wait for Cody. The mother could be in trouble herself, injured, dehydrated, or caught in something. I stood, scanning the flattened grass where she had dragged the bag earlier. Her tracks were easy to spot. Bobcat prints are distinct, rounded, with no claw marks. I followed the line of them, leading deeper into the brush. The trail wound between dried sage bushes and narrow patches of shade. Every so often I found a deeper print or a smear in the dirt where she had stumbled. She was in worse shape than I realized. The kitten inside my jacket shifted weakly, reminding me that time wasn't on anyone's side. I kept walking, following the trail through a narrow corridor of tall grass. Then something caught the light ahead of me, something metallic. I slowed, my pulse tightening. A trap, not the kind meant for research. This one was cruel, rusty, and half-buried, clearly set by someone who knew what they were doing. It was placed in the shadow of a bush, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. A few feet ahead, another, and another. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a random cruelty. Someone had been out here recently, setting traps along a path they expected an animal to take. The bobcat's trail led straight toward them. I knelt, examining the ground. Fresh footprints, human ones, overlapped nearby. Heavy boots, the tread still sharp. Whoever set these traps hadn't left long ago. The wind shifted, carrying a faint noise from farther up the trail, a rustle, a low thump, something struggling. I felt the kitten stir again against my chest. Someone was still out here, and the mother bobcat might already be caught. The metallic clatter I heard up the trail tightened every muscle in my body. I took a slow breath and moved forward, keeping the kitten secured inside my jacket. The traps scattered along the path painted a clear picture. Someone had planned for an animal to come through here. Someone who didn't care what happened once it did. I followed the sound carefully, pushing through a cluster of sagebrush until I reached a shaded clearing. Before I could step into it, a voice called from behind me. "Marcus, hold up." I spun around to see a man approaching through the grass, breathing hard, a radio clipped to his shoulder. His uniform patch read Wildlife Protection. This had to be Cody. He slowed when he reached me, scanning my expression. "You're Marcus, right? Where's the mother? Where's the bag?" I gestured back the way I came, explaining everything in a rush. The kittens, the torn bag, the missing mother, and the traps I'd just found. Cody listened without interruption, his jaw tightening more with each detail. "This area has had problems before," he said. "Someone's been moving animals illegally. The bag fits the pattern." We didn't waste time. Cody motioned for me to stay close and followed the trail I had been tracking. When he reached the traps, he knelt, examined the rusted jaws, and hissed out a frustrated breath. These were set recently, and wrong. Someone wanted a bobcat alive, but didn't care if they injured her doing it. He stood and inspected the surrounding dirt. It didn't take long before he pointed toward a pair of deep tire impressions leading away through the brush. "Pickup truck," he said, "maybe from a ranch. They backed in right here." The idea that someone had trapped the bobcat family, stuffed the kittens in a bag, and then dumped them made my stomach twist. The mother must have torn free somehow, or they dropped her while loading something else. None of it felt accidental. We followed the tire tracks for a short stretch until they disappeared into firmer ground. Then Cody held up a hand, stopping me. You hear that? At first I didn't. Then a faint, ragged scraping sound reached us. Cody moved ahead slowly, and we stepped into another clearing. My breath caught. The mother bobcat was there. She had collapsed beside a rotten fallen log, one paw hooked over a small shape in the dirt. She was trying to drag her second kitten toward the shelter of the log, but her movements were jerky and weak. Every pull looked like it drained everything she had left. I felt the kitten inside my jacket stir and let out a faint mew. The mother's ears twitched at the sound. She lifted her head slowly, her gaze unfocused until it settled on us. Easy, Cody murmured, raising one hand to keep me still. She's stressed. If we rush her, she might panic. But there was no panic left in her, just desperation. Her sides heaved with shallow breaths, her fur clumped with dust and sweat. She placed her head over the kitten she'd been dragging as if shielding it from us. I opened my jacket just enough for the mother to see the kitten I carried. It let out a soft sound, barely audible. The mother responded immediately, her body lifting in a weak attempt to reach us. She wants them together, I said quietly. Cody nodded. Then we do this slow. He circled slightly to the side, keeping his movements small, letting the mother track him with her eyes so she wouldn't be startled. I knelt a few steps away, lowering the kitten near the ground. The mother tensed but didn't lunge. She only let out a fragile, keening sound that tightened the air around us. The kitten inside my jacket protested as I moved it. I set it onto the grass, and it wobbled unsteadily before collapsing beside its sibling. The mother crawled forward, pulling them both close with trembling paws. The relief on her face hit me harder than anything that day. Cody crouched beside me, whispering, "Let her settle." Then we checked their breathing. We waited. The mother nosed each kitten, licking them gently, murmuring low sounds that trembled in her throat. When she finally rested her head on the ground, Cody gave me a small nod. We approached together. The kittens were breathing, but barely. Their chests rose in shallow, uneven motions. They needed help fast. Just as Cody reached for his radio, a faint snap echoed through the trees. We both froze. Another sound followed, a footstep. Then another. Shadows shifted between the pines a short distance away. Cody lowered his radio slowly, eyes narrowing. "Marcus, someone's watching us." And the silhouettes in the trees didn't belong to animals. Cody didn't move at first. He watched the shifting shapes between the trees, his body tense and angled just slightly in front of mine. The mother bobcat sensed the change in our posture and curled protectively around her kittens, her breath coming in thin, rapid pulls. Whatever strength she had left was balanced on a thread. We couldn't stay exposed. If the people who had set those traps were returning, we had no idea how far they would go to get the animals back, or silence anyone who saw them. Cody's voice was low but firm when he spoke. "Marcus, get ready to pull back. But stay calm. Slow movements." The silhouettes shifted again. There were 2, maybe 3, figures standing just behind the line of pines, half hidden in the shadows. My heart hammered so hard I could barely hear. Cody straightened, planting his feet, and took a single step forward. "Hey, wildlife protection. We've already called in backup." His voice boomed through the clearing, sharper and louder than I'd ever heard from him. The sound echoed off the hills. The silhouettes jerked, startled. For a moment, none of us breathed. Then the figures turned and bolted, crashing through the undergrowth. Branches snapped loudly as they disappeared deeper into the forest. Cody stayed rigid for another few seconds, scanning the tree line, before exhaling. "They're gone. For now." He turned to me. "We're moving the kittens. Now." I nodded, and we both crouched beside the mother. She watched us, but didn't growl, didn't swipe. She only shifted enough to uncover her kittens. It was a gesture so deliberate and fragile it felt like she was handing them over. I lifted the first kitten carefully, cradling it in my hands. Cody took the second. Their breaths were shallow, barely there. The mother leaned forward weakly and touched each kitten's head one more time before letting her body fall back against the grass. She wasn't giving up. She was trusting us. We worked fast. Cody pulled a small emergency kit from his pack, one meant for injured fawns or dehydrated raccoons. We wrapped the kittens in soft cloth, gently stimulating their breathing the way wildlife instructors teach, small, slow rubs along the spine, careful not to overstimulate. Minutes stretched thin. The wind brushed the grass in quiet waves. The kitten's tiny ribs began to rise and fall more evenly, their breaths steadier. One let out a faint mewl, then the other. I looked over at the mother. She had lifted her head an inch, watching us with dim but steady eyes. Cody whispered, "She wants them back." We didn't try to move her far. She was too weak. Instead, we cleared a small space beneath the log, an instinctual shelter she had chosen. When I placed the kittens beside her, she pulled them close with trembling paws, curling her body protectively around them. Cody stepped back and finally raised his radio. "This is Cody. We prevented a poaching incident. Mother and kittens alive. We'll need a team to sweep the area." I let his voice fade into the static as I watched the tiny family breathe together, 3 chests rising and falling in quiet rhythm. We waited with the mother until the sun began to lower behind the ridge. When the backup team arrived, they kept their distance, allowing the Bobcat peace. We didn't stay much longer. She needed quiet more than anything. Before we left, I glanced back one last time. The mother had lifted her head, looking straight at me. Her eyes, though tired, held something steady and clear. It wasn't gratitude, not the human kind. It was recognition. A week later, I returned with my camera. I didn't expect to find them. You can't predict wildlife, and bobcats rarely linger where danger once struck. But near the top of a grassy hill, I caught a flicker of movement. 3 figures. The mother bobcat stood tall, her fur fuller, her posture strong again. At her feet, the kittens tumbled clumsily over each other, batting at her tail and climbing the low stones. I froze, afraid to break the moment. But she saw me. She didn't run. She only watched in calm silence as the kittens played. Then she turned her head, just slightly, in the same direction I'd need to walk to leave the hill, as if giving permission for the moment to end on its own. And in that quiet pause, I understood something I hadn't before. I didn't just film wildlife. I lived beside it, briefly, carefully, and sometimes, if I was lucky, the wild trusted me back. The bobcat gathered her kittens and slipped into the tall grass, their small shapes vanishing into gold and shadow. I lowered my camera and let the silence settle. The world felt wider than before, and a little more human for the wildness that lived in it.